Um, it is a novella written by a French aristocrat, writer, and aviator, Antoine de Saint-Exupery. It was first published in English and French in the US by Raynal and Hitchcock in April of 1943. And posthumously in France, following the liberation of France, as Saint-Exupéry's works had been banned by the Vichy regime. The story follows a young prince who visits various planets in space, including Earth, and addresses themes of loneliness, friendship, love, and loss. Despite its style as a children's book, The Little Prince makes poignant observations about life and human nature. The Little Prince became Saint-Exupéry's most successful work, selling an estimated 140 million copies worldwide, which makes it one of the best-selling and most translated books ever published. It has been translated into 361 languages and dialects. The Little Prince has been adapted to numerous art forms and media, including audio recordings, radio plays, live stage, film, television, ballet, and opera. So, Michelle is going to start us off, and then Pat will do a lot of the reading, and then we will end with Michelle. So, Michelle, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and then do your reading, and then Michelle can get, and Pat can then come in and tell us a little bit about herself.
Hi, so I am Michelle Haynes. I am the owner of the Spring Mill Cafe, a French restaurant in Conshohocken. I'm a professor of cultural anthropology, though I'm mostly retired. I'm an interpreter at the UN and translator, but I do not want to get credit for translation of Saint-Exupery. And I am very happy to be part of this program, and I'm very happy to be sharing with Pat, especially since I know that she's an opera singer, and so was my mother. She was a mezzo-soprano. So much pleasure in one time event. So I will start. So here we go. À Léon Verte. Je demande pardon aux enfants d'avoir dédié ce livre à une grande personne. J'ai une excuse sérieuse. Cette grande personne est le meilleur ami que j'ai au monde. J'ai une autre excuse. Cette grande personne peut tout comprendre, même les livres pour enfants. J'ai une troisième excuse. Cette grande personne habite la France, où elle a faim et froid. Elle a bien besoin d'être consolée. Si toutes ces excuses ne suffisent pas, je veux bien dédier ce livre à l'enfant qui a été autrefois cette grande personne. Toutes les grandes personnes ont d'abord été des enfants, mais peut-être que d'entre elles, elles s'en souviennent. Alors je vais corriger ma dédicace à Léon Verte quand il était petit garçon. Voilà.
The Little Prince, dedicated to Léon Verte. Can you hear me? I ask the indulgence of the children who may read this book for dedicating it to a grown-up. I have a serious reason. He's the best friend I have in the world. I have another reason. This grown-up understands everything, even book about children. I have a third reason. He lives in France, where he's hungry and cold. He needs cheering up. If all these reasons are not enough, I will dedicate the book to the child from whom this grown-up grew. All grown-ups were once children, although few of them remember it. And so I correct my dedication to Léon Verte when he was a little boy. Chapter 1. Once, when I was 6 years old, I saw a magnificent picture in a book called True Stories from Nature about the primeval forest. It was a picture of a boa constrictor in the act of swallowing an animal. In the book, it said, boa constrictors swallow their prey whole without chewing it. After that, they are not able to move, and they sleep through the 6 months that they need for digestion. I pondered deeply then over the adventures of the jungle, and after some work with a colored pencil, I succeeded in making my first drawing, my drawing number 1. It looked like this. I showed my masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked them whether the drawing frightened them. But they answered, frightened? Why should anyone be frightened by a hat? My drawing was not a picture of a hat. It was a picture of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. But since the grown-ups were not able to understand it, I made another drawing. I drew the inside of the boa constrictor so that the grown-ups could see it clearly. They always need to have things explained. My drawing number 2 looked like this. The grown-ups' response this time was to advise me to lay aside my drawings of boa constrictors, whether from the inside or the outside, and devote myself instead to geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. That is why, at the age of 6, I gave up what might have been a magnificent career as a painter. I had been disheartened by the failure of my drawing number 1 and my drawing number 2. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is tiresome for children to be always and forever explaining things to them. So then I chose another profession, and I learned to pilot airplanes. I have flown a little over all parts of the world, and it is true that geography has been very useful to me. At a glance, I can distinguish China from Arizona. If one gets lost in the night, such knowledge is valuable. In the course of this life, I have had a great many encounters with a great many people who have been concerned with matters of consequence. I have lived a great deal among grown-ups. I have seen them intimately, close at hand, and that hasn't much improved my opinion of them. Whenever I met one of them who seemed to me at all clear-sighted, I tried the experiment of showing him my drawing number 1, which I have always kept. I would try to find out if this was a person of true understanding. But whoever it was, he or she would always say, that is a hat. Then I would never talk to that person about boa constrictors or primeval forests or stars. I would bring myself down to his level. I would talk to him about bridge and golf and politics and neckties. And the grown-up would be greatly pleased to have met such a sensible man. Chapter 2. So I lived my life alone without anyone that I could really talk to until I had an accident with my plane in the desert of Sahara 6 years ago. Something was broken in my engine, and as I had with me neither a mechanic nor any passengers, I set myself to attempt the difficult repairs all alone. It was a question of life or death for me. I had scarcely enough drinking water to last a week. The first night, then, I went to sleep on the sand, 1,000 miles from any human habitation. I was more isolated than a shipwrecked sailor on a raft in the middle of the ocean. Thus, you can imagine my amazement at sunrise when I was awakened by an odd little voice. It said, "If you please, draw me a sheep." What? Draw me a sheep. I jumped to my feet, completely thunderstruck. I blinked my eyes hard. I looked carefully all around me, and I saw a most extraordinary small person who stood there examining me with great seriousness. Here you may see the best portrait that later I was able to make of him. But my drawing is certainly very much less charming than its model. That, however, is not my fault. The grown-ups discouraged me in my painter's career when I was 6 years old, and I never learned to draw anything except boas from the outside and boas from the inside. Now I stared at this sudden apparition with my eyes fairly starting out of my head in astonishment. "Remember," I had crashed in the desert 1,000 miles from any inhabited region. And yet, my little man seemed neither to be straying uncertainly among the sands, nor to be fainting from fatigue or hunger or thirst or fear. Nothing about him gave any suggestion of a child lost in the middle of the desert 1,000 miles from any human habitation. When at last I was able to speak, I said to him, "But what are you doing here?" And in answer, he repeated very slowly, as if he were speaking of a matter of great consequence, "If you please, draw me a sheep." When a mystery is too overpowering, one dare not disobey, absurd that it might seem to me, 1,000 miles from any human habitation and in danger of death. I took out of my pocket a sheet of paper and my fountain pen. But then I remember how my studies had been concentrated on geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. And I told the little chap, a little crossly too, that I did not know how to draw. He answered me, "That doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep." But I had never drawn a sheep. So I drew for him one of the two pictures I had drawn so often. It was that of a boa constrictor from the outside. And I was astounded to hear the little fella greet it with, "Oh, no, 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 I don't want an elephant inside a boa constrictor. A boa constrictor is a very dangerous creature, and an elephant is very cumbersome. Where I live, everything is very small. What I need is a sheep. Draw me a sheep." So then I made a drawing. He looked at it carefully, and then he said, "No, this sheep is already very sickly. Make me another one." So I made another drawing. My friend smiled gently and indulgently. "You see yourself," he said. "That is not a sheep, that is a ram. It has horns." So then I did my drawing over once more. But it was rejected too, just like the others. "Oh, this one is too old. I want a sheep that will live a long time." By this time, my patience was exhausted because I was in a hurry to start taking my engine apart. So I tossed off this drawing. And I threw out an explanation with it. "This is only his box. The sheep you asked for is inside." I was very surprised to see a light break over the face of my young judge. "That is exactly the way I wanted it. Do you think that this sheep will have to have a great deal of grass?" "Why?" "Because where I live, everything is very small." "Oh, there will surely be enough grass for him," I said. "It is a very small sheep that I have given you." He bent his head over the drawing. "Not so small that—" "Oh, look, he has gone to sleep." And that is how I made the acquaintance of the little prince. Chapter 3. And then the little prince added, "So you too come from the sky. Which is your planet?" At that moment, I caught a glimpse of light in the impenetrable mystery of his presence, and I demanded abruptly, "Do you come from another planet?" But he did not reply. He tossed his head gently without taking his eyes from my plane. "It is true that on that you can't have come from very far away." Chapter 4. If you were to say to the grown-ups, "I saw a beautiful house made of rosy brick with geraniums in the windows and doves on the roof," they would not be able to get any idea of that house at all. You would have to say to them, "I saw a house that cost $500,000. Then they would exclaim, "Oh, what a pretty house that is." Just so, you might say to them, "The proof that the little prince existed is that he was charming, that he laughed, and that he was looking for a sheep. If anybody wants a sheep, that is proof that he exists." And what good would it do to tell them that? They would shrug their shoulders and treat you like a child. But if you said to them, the planet he came from is asteroid B612, then they would be convinced and leave you in peace from their questions. They are like that. One must not hold it against them. Children should always show great forbearance towards grown-up people. But certainly, for us who understand life, figures are a matter of indifference. I should have liked to begin this story in the fashion of the fairy tales. I should have liked to say, once upon a time, there was a little prince who lived on a planet that was scarcely any bigger than himself, who had need of a sheep. To those who understand life, that would have given a much greater air of truth to my story. For I do not want anyone to read my book carelessly. I have suffered too much grief in setting down these memories. 6 years have already passed since my friend went away from me with his sheep. If I try to describe him here, it is to make sure that I shall not forget him. To forget a friend is sad. Not everyone has had a friend, and if I forget him, I may become like the grown-ups who are no longer interested in anything but figures. Chapter 6. On the morning of the 4th day, you said to me, I am very fond of sunsets. Come, let us go look at the sunset now. But we must wait, I said. Wait? For what? For the sunset? We must wait until it is time. At first, you seemed to be very much surprised. And then you laughed to yourself. You said to me, I'm always thinking that I am at home. Just so. Everybody knows that when it is noon in the United States, the sun is setting over France. If you could fly to France in 1 minute, you could go straight into the sunset right from noon. Unfortunately, France is too far away for that. But on your tiny planet, my little prince, all you need to do is to move your chair a few steps. You can see the day end and the twilight falling whenever you like. One day, you said to me, I saw the sunset 44 times. And a little later you added, you know, one loves the sunset when one is so sad. Were you so sad then? I asked, on the day of the 44 sunsets? But the little prince made no reply. Chapter 7. On the 5th day, again, as always, it was thanks to the sheep. The secret of the little prince's life was revealed to me, abruptly, without anything to lead up to it, and as if the question had been born of long and silent meditation on his problem, he demanded, a sheep, if it eats little bushes, does it eat flowers too? A sheep, I answered, eats anything it finds on its reach. Even flowers that have thorns? Yes, even flowers that have thorns. Then the thorns, what use are they? The little prince never let go of a question once he had asked it. As for me, I was upset over that engine, and I answered with the first thing that came into my head. Oh, the thorns are of no use at all. Flowers have thorns just for spite. Oh, there was a moment of complete silence. And then the little prince flashed back at me with a kind of resentfulness. I don't believe you. Flowers are weak creatures. They are naive. They reassure themselves as best they can. They believe that their thorns are terrible weapons. The little prince was now white with rage. The flowers have been growing thorns for millions of years. For millions of years, the sheep have been eating them just the same. And is it not a matter of consequence to try to understand why the flowers go to so much trouble to grow thorns which are never of any use to them? Is the warfare between the sheep and the flowers not important? And if I know, I myself, one flower which is unique in the world, which grows nowhere but on my planet, but which one little sheep can destroy in a single bite some morning without even noticing what he's doing, oh, you think that is not important? His face turned from white to red as he continued. If someone loves a flower, of which just one single blossom grows in all the millions and millions of stars, it is enough to make him happy just to look at the stars. He can say to himself, somewhere my flower is there. But if the sheep eats the flower, in one moment all his stars will be darkened. And you think that is not important? He could not say anything more. His words were choked by sobbing. It is such a secret place, the land of tears. Chapter 8. I soon learned to know this flower better. One morning, the little prince said, the rose suddenly showed herself, and after working with all this painstaking precision, she yawned and said, oh, I am scarcely awake. I beg that you will excuse me. My petals are still disarranged. But the little prince could not restrain his admiration. Oh, how beautiful you are! Am I not? The flower responded sweetly. And I was born at the same moment as the sun. The little prince could guess easily enough that she was not too modest at all, but how moving and exciting she was. I think it is time for breakfast, she added an instant later, if you would have the kindness to think of my needs. And the little prince, completely abashed, went to look for a sprinkling can of fresh water, so he tended the flower. So too, she began very quickly to torment him with her vanity, which was, if the truth be known, a little difficult to deal with. One day, for instance, when she was speaking of her 4 thorns, she said to the little prince, "Let the tigers come with their claws." There are no tigers in my planet, the little prince objected. And anyway, tigers do not eat weeds. I am not a weed, the flower replied sweetly. Oh, please excuse me. I am not at all afraid of tigers, she went on. But I have a great fear of drafts. I suppose you wouldn't have a screen for me? A great fear of drafts. That is bad luck for a plant, remarked the little prince, and added to himself, this flower is a very complex creature. At night, I want you to put me under a glass globe. It is very cold where you live. In the place I came from, but she interrupted herself at that point. She had come in the form of a seed. She could not have known anything of any other worlds. Embarrassed over having let herself be caught on the verge of such a naive untruth, she coughed 2 or 3 times in order to put the little prince in the wrong. The screen? I was just going to look for it when you spoke to me. Then she forced her cough a little more so that he should suffer from remorse just the same. So the little prince, in spite of all the goodwill that was inseparable from his love, had soon come to doubt her. He had taken seriously words which were without importance, and it made him very unhappy. He confided to me one day, I ought not to have listened to her. One never ought to listen to the flowers. One should simply look at them and breathe their fragrance. Mine perfumed all my planet. But I did not know how to take pleasure in all her grace. This tale of claws, which disturbed me so much, should only have filled my heart with tenderness and pity. And he continued his confidences. The fact is that I did not know how to understand anything. I ought to have judged by deeds and not by words. She cast her fragrance and her radiance over me. I ought never to have run away from her. I ought to have guessed all the affection that lay behind her poor little stratagems. Flowers are so inconsistent. But I was too young to know how to love her. Chapter 9. On the morning of his departure, when he watered the flower for the last time and prepared to place her under the shelter of her glass globe, he realized that he was very close to tears. "Goodbye," he said to the flower, but she made no answer. "Goodbye," he said again. The flower coughed, but it was not because she had a cold. "I have been silly," she said to him at last. "I ask your forgiveness. Try to be happy." "It's my fault that you have not known it all the while. But that is of no importance now. But you have been as foolish as I. Try to be happy. Let the glass globe be. I don't want it anymore." "But the wind." "Oh, my cold is not so bad as all that. The cool night air will do me good. I am a flower." "But the animals." "Well, I must endure the presence of 2 or 3 caterpillars if I wish to become acquainted with the butterflies. It seems that they are very beautiful. And if not the butterfly and the caterpillars, who will call upon me? You will be so far away. As for the large animals, I am not at all afraid of any of them. I have my claws." And naively she showed her 4 thorns. And then she added, "Don't linger like this. We Little prince asked himself, how could he recognize me when he had never seen me before? He did not know how the world is simplified for kings. To them, all men are subjects. "Oh, the grown-ups are very strange," the little prince said to himself as he continued on his journey. Chapter 13. The 4th planet belonged to a businessman. This man was so much occupied that he did not even raise his head at the little prince's arrival. "Good morning," the little prince said to him. "Your cigarette has gone out. 3 and 2 make 5, 5 and 7 make 12, 12 and 3 make 15, good morning, 15 and 7 make 22, 22 and 6 make 28, I haven't time to light it again, 26 and 5 make 31, phew, then that makes 501,622,731. 500 millions what?" asked the little prince. "Millions of those little objects," he said, which one sometimes sees in the sky." "Ah, you mean the stars?" "Yeah, that's it, the stars." "And what do you do with these stars?" "What do I do with them?" "Yes, nothing. I own them." "You own the stars?" "Yes." "And what good does it do to you to own the stars?" "It does me the good of making me rich." "And what good does it do to you to be rich?" "It makes it possible for me to buy more stars if any are ever discovered." "And what do you do with them?" "I administer them," replied the businessman. "I count them and recount them. It is difficult, but I am a man who is naturally interested in matters of consequence." The little prince was still not satisfied. "If I owned a silk scarf," he said, "I could put it around my neck and take it away with me. If I owned a flower, I could pluck that flower and take it away with me. But you cannot pluck the stars from heaven." "No, but I can put them in the bank." "Whatever does that mean?" "That means that I write the number of my stars on a little paper, and then I put this paper in a drawer and lock it with a key. And that's all. That is enough, said the businessman. The grown-ups are certainly altogether extraordinary, he said simply, talking to himself as he continued on his journey. Chapter 16. So then the seventh planet was the Earth. Chapter 17. Men occupy a very small place upon the earth. If the 2 billion inhabitants who people its surface were all to stand upright and somewhat crowded together, as they do for some big public assembly, they could easily be put into one public square 20 miles long and 20 miles wide. All humanity could be piled up on a small Pacific island. The grown-ups, to be sure, will not believe you when you tell them that. They imagine that they fill a great deal of space. They fancy themselves very important. You should advise them, then, to make their own calculations. They adore figures, and that will please them. But do not waste your time on this extra task. It is unnecessary. You have, I know, confidence in me. Chapter 20. The little prince was standing before a garden, all abloom with roses. "Good morning," said the roses. The little prince gazed at them. They all looked like his flower. "Who are you?" he demanded, thunderstruck. "We are roses," the roses said. And he was overcome with sadness. His flower had told him that he was the only one of her kind in all the universe. And here were 5,000 of them, all alike, in one single garden. Oh, she would be very much annoyed, he said to himself, if she should see that. She would cough most dreadfully, and she would pretend that she was dying to avoid being laughed at. And I should be obliged to pretend that I was nursing her back to life, for if I did not do that to humble myself also, she would really allow herself to die. Then he went on with his reflections. I thought I was rich with a flower that was unique in all the world, and all I had was a common rose, a common rose. That doesn't make me a very great prince. And he lay down in the grass and cried. Chapter 21. It was then that the fox appeared. "Good morning," said the fox. "Good morning," the little prince responded politely, although when he turned around, he saw nothing. "I am right here," the voice said, "under the apple tree." "Who are you?" asked the little prince, and added, "You are very pretty to look at." "I am a fox." "Oh, come and play with me," proposed the little prince. "I'm so unhappy." "I cannot play with you," the fox said. "I am not tamed." "Oh, please excuse me," said the little prince. But after some thought, he added, "What does that mean, tame?" "Oh, you do not live here," said the fox. "What is that you are looking for?" "I'm looking for men," said the little prince. "What does that mean, tame?" "Men," said the fox, "they have guns and they hunt. It is very disturbing. They also raise chickens. These are their only interests. Are you looking for chickens?" "No," said the little prince, "I'm looking for friends." "What does that mean, tame?" "Oh, it is an act too often neglected," said the fox. "It means to establish ties." "To establish ties?" "Just that," said the fox. "To me, you are still nothing more than a little boy who is just like 100,000 other little boys, and I have no need of you. And you, on your part, have no need of me. To you, I am nothing more than a fox like 100,000 other foxes. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world. To you, I shall be unique in all the world." "I am beginning to understand," said the little prince. "There is a flower. I think that she has tamed me." "It is possible," said the fox. "On the earth one sees all sorts of things." "Oh, but this is not on the earth," said the little prince. The fox seemed perplexed and very curious. "On another planet?" Yes. Are there hunters on this planet? No. Haha, that is interesting. Are there chickens? No. Oh, nothing is perfect, sighed the fox, but he came back to his idea. My life is very monotonous, the fox said. I hunt chicken, men hunt me, all the chickens are just alike, and all the men are just alike, and in consequence, I am a little bored. But if you tame me, it will be as if the sun came to shine on my life. I shall know the sound of a step that will be different from all the others. Other steps send me hurrying back underneath the ground. Yours will call me like music out of my burrow. And then, look, you see the grain fields down yonder? I do not eat bread. Wheat is of no use to me. The wheat fields have nothing to say to me, and that is sad. But you have hair that is the color of gold. Think how wonderful that will be when you have tamed me. The grain, which is also golden, will bring me back the thought of you, and I shall love to listen to the wind on the wheat. The fox gazed at the little prince for a long time. Please, tame me, he said. I want you very much, the little prince replied, but I have not much time. I have friends to discover and a great many things to understand. One only understands the things that one tames, said the fox. Men have no more time to understand anything. They buy things already made at the shops, but there is no shop anywhere when one can buy friendship, and so men have no friends anymore. If you want a friend, tame me. What must I do to tame you? Asked the little prince. Oh, you must be very patient, replied the fox. First of all, you will sit down at a little distance from me, like that, in the grass. I shall look at you out of the corner of my eye, and you will say nothing. Words are the source of misunderstandings. But you will sit a little closer to me every day. The next day, the little prince came back. It would have been better to come back at the same hour, said the fox. If, for example, you come at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then at 3 o'clock I shall begin to be happy. I shall feel happier and happier as the hour advances. At 4 o'clock I shall already be worrying and jumping about. I shall show you how happy I am. But if you come at just any time, I shall never know at what hour my heart is to be ready to greet you. So the little prince tamed the fox, and when the hour of his departure drew near, oh, said the fox, I shall cry. It is your own fault, said the little prince. I never wished you any sort of harm, but you wanted me to tame you. Yeah, that is so. But now you're going to cry, said the little prince. Yeah, that is so. Then it has done you no good at all. Oh, it has done me good, said the fox, because of the color of the wheat fields. Go and look again at the roses. You will understand now that yours is unique in all the world. Then come back to say goodbye to me, and I will make you a present of a secret. The little prince went away to look again at the roses. You are not at all like my rose, he said. As yet you are nothing. No one has tamed you, and you have tamed no one. You are like my fox when I first knew him. He was only a fox like 100,000 other foxes, but I have made him my friend, and now he's unique in all the world. And the roses were very much embarrassed. You are beautiful, but you are empty, he went on. One could not die for you. To be sure, an ordinary passerby would think that my rose looked just like you, the rose that belongs to me. But in herself alone, she's more important than all the hundreds of you other roses, because It is she that I have watered. It is she that I have put under the glass globe, because it is she that I have sheltered behind the screen, because it is for her that I have killed the caterpillars, except the 2 or 3 that we have saved to become butterflies, because it is she that I have listened to when she grumbled or boasted, or even sometimes when she said nothing, because she is my rose. And he went back to meet the fox. Goodbye, he said. Goodbye, said the fox. And now here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. What is essential is invisible to the eye, the little prince repeated, so that he would be sure to remember. It is the time you have wasted for your rose that make your rose so important. It is the time I have wasted for my rose, said the little prince, so that he would be sure to remember. Men have forgotten this truth, said the fox, but you must not forget it. You become responsible forever for what you have tamed. You are responsible for your rose. I am responsible for my rose, the little prince repeated, so that he would be sure to remember. Chapter 26. And the little prince said to me, and at night you will look up at the stars. Where I live, everything is so small that I cannot show you where my star is to be found. It is better like that. My star will just be one of the stars for you. And you will love to watch all the stars in the heavens. They will all be your friends. And besides, I am going to make you a present. What are you trying to say? In one of the stars, I shall be living. In one of them, I shall be laughing. And so it will be as if all the stars were laughing when you look at them, at the sky at night. And you, only you, will have stars that can laugh. And he laughed again. And when your sorrow is comforted, because time soothes all sorrows, you will be content that you have known me. You will always be my friend. You will always want to laugh with me. And you will sometimes open your window so for that pleasure. And your friends will be properly astonished to see you laughing as you look up at the sky. Then you will say to them, oh, yeah, the stars always make me laugh. And they will think that you are crazy. It will be a very shabby trick that I shall have played on you. And he laughed again. It will be as if in place of the stars, I had given you a great number of little bells that knew how to laugh. Chapter 27. And now, 6 years have already gone by. I have never yet told this story. The companions who met me on my return were well content to see me alive. I was sad, but I told them, I am tired. Now my sorrow is comforted a little, that is to say, not entirely. But I know that he did go back to his planet because I did not find his body at daybreak. It was not such a heavy body. And at night, I love to listen to the stars. It is like 500 million little bells. This is to me the loveliest and saddest landscape in the world. It is here that the little prince appeared on earth and disappeared. Look at it carefully, so that you will be sure to recognize it in case you travel someday to the African desert. And if you should come upon this spot, please do not hurry on. Wait for a time exactly under the star. And then, if a little man appears who laughs, who has golden hair, and who refuses to answer questions, you will know who he is. If this should happen, please comfort me. Send me word that he has come back.
Bravo.
Michelle?
Okay. It's very interesting that the English does not follow exactly the French. Very interesting. Mais pourquoi pas? Alors, bon, je reprends un peu plus bas. Ça, c'est pour moi le plus beau et le plus triste paysage du monde. C'est le même paysage que celui de la page précédente, mais je l'ai dessiné une fois encore pour bien vous le montrer. C'est ici que le petit prince a apparu sur terre, puis disparu. Regardez attentivement ce paysage afin d'être sûr de le reconnaître. Si vous voyagez un jour en Afrique, dans le désert, et s'il vous arrive de passer par là, je vous en supplie, ne vous pressez pas. Attendez un peu, juste sous l'étoile. Si alors un enfant vient à vous, s'il rit, s'il a des cheveux d'or, s'il ne répond pas quand on l'interroge, vous devinerez bien qui il est. Alors, soyez gentil, ne me laissez pas tellement triste. Écrivez-moi vite qu'il est revenu.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you.
Merci.
And
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Merci, Pat. Nice to meet you.
That was terrific. It was read with so much, I can't explain it, but just read so beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I love this book, and I guess it shows. This book was given to me when I was about maybe 10 years old. And I don't think many books can be read by the same person, like at 10, at 20, at 30, at 40, and 50, and at 60. And every time it seems that the message is even deeper. You know, one can find even more intrinsic things that are discovered in this book. And so that's why I feel passionate about this book. And I badly wanted to share it with you all.
May I speak now, Donna? Okay. Patricia, I want to thank you for a magnificent reading of that book, which has been in my heart since 1964.
Wow.
I was on a ship crossing the ocean with 4 children. My husband had already gone. He was going to work there. And I made the acquaintance of a young man who was studying to be a priest. We became good friends. He helped me with my children, and he gave me that book. Said, "This is for your heart." And so I thank you and thank you and thank you. And I agree with you. It means more as I've grown older than it did when I was 30-something. Thank you.
My very pleasure. My very pleasure.
well, Pat, thank you so much for that read. It was just wonderful. And as everybody, I was looking at everybody and just could see how much they enjoyed that read. And do you want to share a little bit about why you're here in Philadelphia, or no?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I'm a former opera singer, and I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I'm also a dog judge currently.
Yes.
I judge dog shows, purebred dog shows, and I judge all over the world. So in February, I was here judging dog shows, and I had my ticket to leave the country on the 16th. I was going to New Zealand to continue on my judging tour. And my New Zealand show was canceled 2 days before my flight, fortunately, because otherwise I would have been caught in New Zealand. But the flights to Argentina, Argentina closed its borders 4 days before that. So I got stuck here in the States. Yeah, and I'm not really sure when I'm gonna be able to go back home. Fortunately, I have excellent friends here, and my beloved friend, Matt DiGiulio, welcomes me in his home, and I really, to a point that I feel really at home in his place. And so here I am, and because he is the administrator of the Civic Hills Society Hills Civic Association, I learned about Penn's Village and about the readings, and I decided, I was here, I decided to join you guys, and I have enjoyed all of the readings very much, and I thought, gee, I really would like to share The Little Prince with them. And so that's the story.